What's going on, everybody? Kip Campbell here with another quick archery tip for you. I'm going to try not to get into too much detail because this is a subject that you can go down a lot of different tuning rabbit holes on this. Today, we're going to talk about broadhead tuning and broadhead flight. So, once you get your bow set up, you got the perfect bow, you've sunk about 2 grand into a big setup with sights and everything else you can buy. It's shooting great, you got your field points hitting right where you want them to, but then you run into the inevitable my broadheads hit different than my field points. There's a lot of schools of thought on how to approach solving this problem, but the main place to start is you want to get a quality broadhead, and you want, first of all, for your bow to be completely tuned. So you want to get that bow tuned up to where you're shooting bullet holes through paper. Then you progress into tuning, a little more fine tuning, to get your broadheads to fly just like your field tips. And like I said, you have to start off with quality broadheads and quality arrow components. So if we're talking about arrow components, we're talking about the hardware on the end of the arrow. So if your hardware is not built right, if it's not set right, if the ends of your arrows aren't square, that can affect the way your broadhead sits, and it's going to give you wobble depending on how you got your arrow set up. So first and foremost, you need to get quality broadheads. Secondly, what you screw your broadheads to is important, and how square and how precisely that setup is mega important. So what we're looking at with that, like I said, is get your insert square, get it glued in there right, and then you're going to want to check it. So how are you going to check it? Well, you can old school spin it and look at the knock and see if there's any oscillation or wobbling. That's just good in the field test. But if you got a little bit of money, which you can, this is a cheap arrow spinner, just give it a little spin, put the broadhead on there, and don't jump to conclusions and blame the broadhead or the arrow right away. This broadhead needs to be tested on 2 or 3 different arrows to make sure that it spins the same. So I'm not finding any discrepancy in this one whatsoever. It's spinning a perfect spiral, perfect tight spiral, where what I'm looking for against this white contrast piece of paper here, contrast the gray in the broadhead, I'm looking for any big circles. So if the broadhead was out of whack, it'd be doing circles like this. It's making a really tight, fine point, just like you're throwing a spiral in a football. And that's what I want to see from my broadhead spin right there. So whatever broadheads I'm using, fixed blade or mechanicals, I'm going to spin test it. The next thing that I'm going to do with my bow is, well, firstly, I'm going to make sure it's shooting a bullet hole through paper, a perfect bullet hole tuned through paper. Then I'm going to take bare shaft arrows and fletched arrows and shoot groups. Now, traditionally, I've found that that's a pretty good indicator. If I can get my bare shaft arrows to hit where my fletched arrows hit, then I'm going to be shooting a perfect broadhead. The way to adjust that, and I said I didn't want to talk too much about it because we could get into 10 different ways to tune your bow and 10 different ways to tune your arrow to make all this stuff happen. But you're going to go out on the range after you do your initial tuning, and you're going to shoot a group of fletched arrows, a group of bare shaft arrows. Then you're going to use your rest, micro adjust your rest, and I'm talking like millimeters at a time, just fractions of a millimeter even sometimes. Just the slightest movement will change it. You'll bring your fletched arrows into your bare shaft arrows, and then that should give you identical broadhead and field point flight. Now, again, there's so many components to this. It's the tune of your bow, it's the tune of your arrows, it's the quality of your broadhead. So don't jump to conclusions as soon as you have the problem identified as something's a problem. Don't blame it on the broadhead or necessarily blame it on the arrow or even the tune of the bow. It could be a combination, it could be one or the other. So that's just a good sort of quick start to where your head needs to be at when you're thinking about broadhead flight and accuracy when it comes to especially fixed blade broadheads, but also mechanicals. My recommendation is A, buy a quality broadhead, and B, if you can't get your broadheads to hit where your field points do, just buy the dead meats. Problem solved. Unless you got a crooked arrow like this, these things are going to fly right with your field points in every scenario that I've ever put them through. I mean, these and the Mega Meat, incredibly accurate. And for that matter, G5's fixed blades fly great too. With a fixed blade, you may have to do a little tweaking and tuning with some bare shaft tuning and stuff, but The simple answer is these things hit hard and they're lethal, and you screw them on the end of your arrow, and you don't have to worry about a whole lot of tuning because these things fly just like a field tip, period. And they cut like a fixed blade. What more do you really want? But hey, if you're a fixed blade guy, we got something for you too. But you definitely want to make sure that your broadheads are flying right. And it's really not that hard. Just make sure your bow's tuned, your arrow's tuned up, squared up, and you got a quality broadhead. And don't fall for internet fakes. The Chinese and some other folks can make that package right there with some crappy, bad broadheads inside of them, and you're gonna buy what you think is a great deal on a G5 or any of your other top brands out there, and you're gonna end up with a piece of junk that's gonna wound a deer. So make sure you get them from a reputable source. Don't, if it sounds too good to be true, and they're selling a pack of 3-blade G5s for $5 on the internet, it ain't G5. So don't settle for anything less than the authentic best. That's my broadhead tuning tip. See y'all later.